Hi everyone, my name is Ramya Ambikapathi from Purdue University. Today I'm presenting an analysis looking at how food environment influences household food purchase patterns, diets, and nutritional status. This is based on a food vendor mapping in peri-urban Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I'm presenting this on behalf of our co-authors from Purdue and our colleagues from Tanzania. In Africa, majority of peri-urban population relies on purchased foods. Food environment where people purchase foods is very complex. With a high density of informal vendors, it creates challenges in characterizing the food environment. So the goal of the study is to characterize food environment, including the informal vendors, and create summary metrics, and evaluate these metrics in association with the household food purchase patterns, diets, and nutritional status. This analysis from the Diet Choice and Positive Living Study, or DECIDE, which is a mixed method study set in peri-urban Dar es Salaam. DECIDE aims to characterize food choice and environment among families with persons living with HIV. We characterize all food vendors into three main categories of formal, semi-formal, and informal food vendors. Formal vendor, as shown here in this photo, characterized by permanent structure and location, like shops. Semi-formal vendor, like the photo in the middle, have consistent daily location, but have a semi-permanent structure like baskets and pallet installs. And then finally, informal vendors or mobile vendors like the street hawkers, and they vary in space, structure, and time. All of these vendors were geotagged, and we collected information on gender of the food vendor, typology, food groups, and 58 plus food items. Using this tool, we conducted a census of the food environment in our study area. So this includes all larger and smaller streets, alleyways. In total, we had over 6,000 vendors. Here I'm showing you the three maps by type of food vendors. This covers an area of 10 square kilometers, which seems small, but it's home to about 100,000 people. Out of 6,627 vendors, 39% were formal, 44% were semi-formal, and 17% were informal. Third of these vendors sold vegetables, but if you look more closely, the green leafy vegetables were predominantly sold by semi-formal and informal vendors. Then we calculated three main metrics based on food environment data we collected. These are borrowed from landscape ecology to describe the ecological processes. The first metric is density, which is just a count, and this is the most commonly used metric. It's a count of informal, formal vendors, semi-formal vendors, specific food groups, and food items. The second metric we used was dispersion, which is like clusters. So this metric describes the spatial distribution. And another name for this is called hotspots. Lastly, we calculated a measure of variety and evenness called diversity and dominance. For those familiar with diversity, we use Shannon diversity. So a number closer to 1 indicates higher diversity of vendors. And dominance, which is the opposite of diversity, is a measure of one type of vendor dominating the landscape. We find that the metrics are correlated with each other, mostly positive, except for diversity and density, which were negatively correlated. These FE metrics were then calculated by distance to the household. Here's an example of density of green leafy vegetable vendors within our participants' household. These numbers are median with interquartile ranges. So within 300 meters of the household, there are 6 vendors who sell green leafy vegetables. And this number increases to 69 vendors when you're including the first 1,000 meters within a household. A typical participant in the DECIDE study was a woman about 40 years of age, has been diagnosed with HIV for 4 years. Half the household share toilets and almost everyone has cell phone. 71% of the household mentioned they bought vegetables in the last 7 days. Most of them are from semi-formal or informal vendors. The median energy intake was 2,700 calories. And the median BMI is 23.1, where a third of the population is overweight or obese, while 10% is underweight. Median waist to hip ratio is 0.85. Here I'm showing you the logistic regression results from 12 models looking at the FA metrics at different distances and the association with the purchases of vegetable. Odds ratio above 1 indicates higher likelihood of buying vegetables. Starting at 500 meters, higher density of vegetable vendors increases the odds of buying vegetables, and this effect is even greater when you find vegetable vendors are closer to home. And these effects translate nicely to reduced intake of total energy by 50 to 100 calories. I do want to point out all of these models adjusted for a variety of individual and household level demographics. Here I'm showing you regression results looking at waist to hip ratio and body mass index of all three types of metrics at 200 meters and 1000 meters. We see some association with vegetable hotspots, but these are very small, and some higher vendor diversity and lower dominance is associated with lower waist to hip ratio. We're going to be exploring these associations more carefully. To summarize, we set out to characterize a typical dynamic food environment found in low and middle income countries and create a summary measures. And found that having higher density of vegetable and green leafy vegetable vendors closer to home is associated with increased purchase of vegetables and reduced total energy intake. Overall, food purchasing and intake is complex, so for targeting a certain behavior like consumption of soda or vegetables, we need to align the sources of these from the food environment and look at the association in particular. And we'll be exploring some of that, like for example, the soda intake or fruits purchases. We plan on examining spatial and temporal variation in food environment using the same geospatial methods. And then finally, we plan on identifying intervention points. For example, the informal vendors are the major sources of green leafy vegetables in this community. So creating a regulatory framework that supports these vendors for healthy eating patterns would be great for the diets in this community, as well as it's a good source of livelihood for the vendors. I would like to acknowledge my team and the participants for giving me this opportunity to present on their behalf and highlight their findings from this community, and also our funders, drivers of food choice, for making this study possible. Thank you.